Today, I'm going to be sharing some really cool insights with you. So we are comparing the Hindu and the Buddhist paths to awakening, okay? In this video, we're going to explore both of these paths and look at the similarities between them. The point of this video is to show you that regardless of the path that we choose, regardless of the differences in the underlying philosophy, ultimately, the inner transformation that needs to happen in us is pretty much the same, okay? And that's the point. That's what we should be focusing on. You're going to see that regardless of the path that you choose, it really comes down, your spiritual growth really comes down to cultivating a really calm and peaceful mind that can realize its true nature, cultivating a loving heart, an open heart, an intention that wants to serve and benefit others. Becoming somebody who has the wisdom of how nature works, how life works, so that you can live in a feeling of acceptance and contentment instead of grasping at things and craving for things and hoping that things that are temporary would be permanent. Right? So it really comes down to calm mind, loving heart, and having a certain level of wisdom where you can live life in a nice equanimous kind of way. This is the point, okay? Now, of course, what I'll be sharing with you are my own observations from studying and practicing these paths. So you don't have to accept or believe everything that I say, right? But the point, of me doing this video is to help you make sense of your own path and to essentially know if you're doing the right thing, right? Because ultimately, the 3 or 4 things that we're going to be speaking about, if those are happening, if those changes are happening in your journey, then you can be safe in knowing that, okay, you are doing the right things, essentially, because when it comes to spiritual growth, right, the point is the inner transformation. Any religion that is there as a framework, it's there as a support. But once you cross over to the other side, no one looks at what religion you practice. They looked at it's the inner transformation that counts. Are you a calm person? Are you a loving person? Have you cultivated a really good amount of compassion? This is the point, okay? So we're going to be comparing, how we'll do it, right, is we're going to be comparing the 4 yogas of Hinduism, Bhakti, Karma, Jnana, and Raja Yoga, and we're going to look at the transformation. What happens in these yogas? What are we doing here? And then we're going to compare that, and I will give you the counterpart of that in the teachings of the Buddha, in the path of the Buddha, essentially, okay? So it'll be really interesting to see how, even though the philosophy, the outer philosophy is different, the inner transformation is actually the same. The way that we need to change and transform as individuals is very much similar, okay? So that's what we'll be covering. Now, just in case you are not familiar with the 4 yogas, I've actually done a video called The 4 Types of Yoga. It's on the channel. I'll try and link it in the description so you can watch it. And Swami Vivekananda, right, he always spoke about the best way to practice the 4 yogas is to integrate them. To integrate the 4 yogas into our life, that has the most benefit. And the reason for doing that is that if we focus on one way too much compared to the others, then it creates a bit of an imbalance. So a simple example of that, right, is that let's say meditation is your path, okay, and all you do is meditate. All you do is meditate. You don't really go out there and try to serve people or interact with them. Then it's likely that we can become a very selfish person who only wants, to protect our own peace, the inner peace that we have in meditation, and we just want to be in that state. We don't really want to interact with other people. But the truth is that spiritual growth cannot occur without being able to interact and feel that oneness with people, right? Because remember, nothing is separate. That separation is an illusion. It is all connected, and we need to be able to live in that way. Okay, so integrating the 4 yogas is what is recommended, and what you will see in the teachings of the Buddha is that these 4 elements, from the 4 yogas are actually also all coming together in the teachings of the Buddha as well. Just the outer philosophy is different. Okay, so enough of the introduction. Let's get into looking at these parts. We're going to start with the first one, which is Bhakti Yoga. All right, so let's look at the first one. In the Hindu tradition is Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is the path of love, essentially. And what we're doing here, ultimately, is building a relationship with the divine. A really common method, which you probably know, that is used, is building a personal connection to a personal form of your liking. In Hinduism, you have, personal forms like Shiva, Krishna, the goddess, Devi, Ganesha, Hanuman, right? So many different options. And what we're doing essentially is based on our personality or temperament or our liking. We choose a personal form that is our favorite, our Ishta Devta, and we build a relationship with them through worshipping them by chanting their mantras, devotional songs, hymns, this type of thing. And slowly, you begin to build a relationship with this aspect of the divine, and you cultivate complete love toward this aspect of the divine. Now, the point, what we're getting at is to have, the knowledge or the understanding that God is omnipresent, right? The divine is everywhere, in all things, in all beings. So this means that when you are worshipping that deity, you are not just worshipping that deity in a temple or in your little shrine at home, but rather you are training yourself to see that deity within all beings. So anyone that you encounter in the world, friend, stranger, loved one, enemy, animals, right? In all of them, you can see a spark of the divine. Not just the divine, you can see a spark of your personal form of God. So let's say, for example, you like Shiva, then everyone you meet is Shiva. Your parents are Shiva, your friends are Shiva, your neighbors are Shiva, and also the people that you don't like, you begin to see Shiva in them. And when this happens, it's very easy to see that your love and compassion it'll become really easy, right? It's going to be really easy to be loving, to be compassionate, because now you're no longer dealing with humans. You're no longer dealing with just, a mere sentient being. Anyone that you meet, essentially, you see them as a manifestation of your personal deity. And here you can see the point is love. First, you're cultivating love toward the divine, but ultimately you are practicing the truth, which is the divine resides everywhere, in everyone. And through that love that you have cultivated, you can now see the divine in everybody you interact with. So it becomes really easy to love. Compassion becomes easy. You stop harming. Nobody needs to tell you, don't harm others, don't steal from others, don't swear at others. No one needs to tell you that, because it's automatically going to come from you, right? It's really simple. So this is how, in the Hindu tradition, love is cultivated. Now, let's look at the counterpart of this in the Buddhist tradition. So now we look at the Buddhist tradition, right? Now, of course, in the Buddhist teachings, the concept of God is not there. So the love over here is cultivated directly toward all beings. Directly, it's cultivated directly, right? So this is where you have practices like loving kindness meditation, where you begin to generate feelings of love for yourself, for a friend, for a stranger, for somebody who you don't like that much, and ultimately toward all beings, right? So here the love is generated directly toward all beings. There's other practices like Tonglen as well. These are fundamental practices. Cultivating love is a fundamental aspect of the Buddhist path. The Buddhism is a synonym for love and compassion, right? So here we're cultivating it directly. But here there is a view as well. Just like in Bhakti Yoga, you need, as humans, right, we need a reason to love other humans. Because we find it difficult, right? We need a reason. So in the first one, in the Hindu tradition, we're saying that the divine resides in all beings, and this is how you generate the energy to cultivate love and feel love toward other humans and other beings. So in the Buddhist tradition, there is a view as well. Okay, one view, a really common one, is that all humans, all beings, are the same. They all want happiness and they all don't want suffering. So by looking at someone else being very similar to yourself, because you want happiness and you don't want to suffer, and you realize that, okay, I'm in a human body, they're in a human body, and they also want happiness and they don't want suffering. So based on this, you can create some kind of compassion and love toward the other person and feel their pain and feel their happiness, right? Want them to be happy. Another view, which I feel is a bit more powerful, is viewing all sentient beings as your mother, okay? So the concept is really simple, that we have been around in samsara, in this cycle of birth and rebirth, for so long, for eons and eons, that enough time has passed that every being out there has at one point in time been our mother. In one lifetime, they've been our mother, right? So just like in this lifetime, if you have a mother that cares for you and loves you so much, can do anything for you, that amount of kindness every other being has also given you in some lifetime or the other, okay? So thinking in this way, we begin to cultivate love for all beings. That, okay, when you look at someone, you look at them with the view that you may be my enemy right now, but I know that in some lifetime you have been my mother, and I want to repay that kindness. And this is how you cultivate love toward them. So there's many views. These are two really popular views that are in the Buddhist tradition. Again, here the point is to cultivate love, right? So coming to the point is that whether you take the approach of believing in God or you take the approach of cultivating directly, for you as an individual, for us as individuals, we need to cultivate love and an open heart. That is the point. That is the inner transformation that needs to happen, okay? So when we do this, it then becomes really easy to practice the second one, the second yoga, which we're going to discuss now, which is karma yoga. All right, so the second one is karma yoga. Now, karma yoga is the path of selfless service, okay? And if you have cultivated bhakti, if you have cultivated love for the divine and for all beings, then it becomes really easy to serve them selflessly, because now you're no longer serving just humans, right? Or animals. You are serving your deity, your version, your personal God, essentially. So this is the path of karma yoga. Now, let me tell you a story, okay? This is essentially showing you how any kind of work can become worship, okay, on this path. So this is a true story, by the way. There was a Swami who goes to the airport for his flight, okay? Now his flight is at, I think, 2 or 3 a.m., wee hours of the morning, and the airport's quite empty. There's a few workers there, and the workers are just chilling because they're bored at that time, and they see the Swami sitting and waiting for his flight, and they think, you know what, we're free, he is free, let's go and ask him for a teaching, right? So they go to him and they say, Swami, give us a teaching, please. Tell us something nice, tell us something motivating, inspirational that we can take home. And the Swami feels a bit put on the spot, right? He's like, what do I say? How do I just come up with a teaching? And he thinks about it for a second and he says, okay, I know what to say, okay? So he asks one of the guys, one of the men, that what God, do you believe in God? And he says, yes. Which God do you believe in? And the man says, Hanuman. And he says, okay, so how do you pray to Hanuman? How do you worship Hanuman? And the man says that every morning before I leave my home, I light a diya, like a butter lamp, and put some flowers for him in the temple. This is my offering to him in the morning, then I leave for work. And the Swami says, okay, great. Now, do you believe that God is everywhere? Do you believe that Hanuman is everywhere, in all beings? And the man says, yeah, of course I do believe that. And then the Swami says, okay, great. So now, when you're working here at the airport, okay, what do you do? And he says, I sweep the floor, I greet the passengers, I give them way. And the Swami says, okay, so now, every time you're sweeping the floor and somebody's walking past, don't just think that you're sweeping the floor like a mere mundane activity. You think that Hanuman is passing and I'm sweeping the floor for Hanuman to walk. And the guy's eyes light up. Okay, so he's liking this now. And then the Swami says that whenever you see someone and you smile at them or you welcome them, you're not just smiling at a human. You look at him as if Hanuman is present in him, and you bow, or you smile at him with love. And the guy gets even happier. Okay, so he tells him that anything that you do, greeting people, sweeping the floor, right, interacting with them, you basically feel that you're doing it as an offering to the Hanuman that resides in them, not just to a mere human that's passing. And all of the men by now are they're feeling pretty good about this. They say, wow, so the whole day we can serve Hanuman. And the Swami says, yes. And this is the thing. This is Karma Yoga, where even your normal acts can become selfless and can become an offering to the divine, essentially. Okay, so when we work in this way, it doesn't matter what work we're doing. We don't need to have some high purpose, because everything that we're doing is an offering to the divine, right? As long as it's a good thing and a helpful thing, of course. So this is Karma Yoga. Now, what's the transformation that's happening here? Is you're becoming selfless. You're not doing selfish, me. Well, how can I please myself? No. You're thinking, how can I make others happy? How can I serve them? And anything that I do becomes a beneficial act for someone, something that radiates out love and help and, this kind of an attitude. So in the Buddha's teachings, on the Buddhist path, is there something similar where you cultivate this selfless attitude? So in the Buddhist tradition, what is the similar aspect or practice? Very simple. It is the ideal of a bodhisattva. The ideal of a bodhisattva. What is a bodhisattva? A bodhisattva is somebody who wishes to attain enlightenment, but not just for himself or herself. In order to benefit all beings, they want to become a Buddha. They want to become a fully awakened, fully realized being, so that they can free themselves from samsara, but so that once they've attained that state, they can also free everyone else. Okay? How amazing is that? So they're not looking to become enlightened and free themselves and leave, right? No, they want to help everyone. It's kind of like if you're a prisoner and you learn how to break out of the jail, right? A selfish person would break out and flee on his own. But a bodhisattva is someone who learns how to become free, becomes free, and then helps each and every other person escape. Why? Why is he doing this selfless act? Because he knows that every one of those beings in there, in some life or another, has been his mother, right? So he wants to help them. He wants to help them also become free. This is it's not just compassion, it is the great compassion that a bodhisattva develops, right? For himself and for all beings. So a perfect example of this, not perfect example, the ultimate example of this is the Dalai Lama. Okay, the Dalai Lama, of course, we all know, is a bodhisattva. He is the 14th Dalai Lama, which means that he has reincarnated. He has come back 14 times to do the same work, to spread the Dharma, to spread the teachings of the Buddha, to help people become free of their suffering, both their immediate and temporal suffering, but also the ultimate suffering of being in this cycle of birth and rebirth, right? So if he wants, he could, become enlightened and become liberated and not really come back into the cycle of birth and rebirth, right? But he has chosen to do that, and he's done that 14 times. And it's not just him. All real spiritual teachers do this, right? They come back again and again and again to free beings, right? This is ultimately what a bodhisattva is. So this selfless aspect It is there in the spiritual path. You cannot grow spiritually if you have a selfish attitude. If we have a self-cherishing attitude, it's not possible, right? So this is why, just doing meditation alone and wanting to, be in that peace for yourself, that's not how it works, right? You need to meditate to realize your true nature, to realize that you are pure love within, and then actually come out and spread and radiate that love outward. This is ultimately what we need to do and how we need to train, right? This is the point. So to clarify, in terms of the inner transformation that happens here is we become selfless, and we get rid of that self-cherishing, self-grasping attitude, right? The one that thinks of me, where the ego is really high. Ego being our sense of identity is really high. This selfless attitude, it diminishes the ego. And when it diminishes the ego, we naturally realize that we are one with the whole. Okay, so in the Hindu tradition, it is karma yoga that is practiced consciously, and in the Buddhist teachings, it is the ideal of a bodhisattva, the wish to become a fully awakened Buddha, not just for yourself, but in order to free all beings. All right, so let's now come to number 3, which is, we've done Bhakti Yoga, we've done Karma Yoga, now we're coming to number 3, which is Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga is the path of meditation, okay? I don't think there's much to speak about here, because we know that meditation is a key component in both the Hindu path and the Buddhist path of awakening. Awakening is probably likely impossible without practicing meditation, right? So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to develop a mind that is extremely calm and extremely concentrated, and gain control over this thing that we call the mind. So on a day-to-day level, of course, having a calm mind means that you can be someone who can walk through life with a sense of ease, with a sense of equanimity, with a sense of balance. This is really, really important, and these are the marks of somebody who is on the spiritual path and is growing, right? But at the same time, the real reason of cultivating a calm and concentrated mind is in order to realize or have a direct experiential realization of the truth, of the true nature of reality. You see, normally when our mind is in its scattered state, right, monkey mind, many thoughts here and there, it's like it's a weak level of mind, right? I don't mean this in a negative context, but for example, take the sun. The sun right now is there. Its rays are scattered. Okay, so because the rays are scattered, they're just warming us. They're not burning us, right? If the sun wanted to, it could put anything on fire, set anything on fire, right? So those same rays that are scattered, when they're scattered, they're just warming the earth. But if we were to converge them, you've done the science experiment. You take a magnifying glass, you converge the rays of the sun and make them one-pointed, converge them. Anything that is below, whether it's a piece of paper or something else, it gets set on fire, right? So in the same way, if the mind, the scattered mind, is concentrated, one-pointed, it can essentially penetrate anything. It can understand the truth of anything that it is looking at. This is the law of nature. Whenever you look deeply into something with a fully concentrated mind, its true nature, its truth becomes revealed to you, right? Scientists actually do the same thing when they study something deeply until they learn the true nature of what they're studying, right? Here in meditation, we're interested in the true nature of reality. So the direct experiential realization that we're trying to get is, for example, in the Hindu tradition, it is realizing that oneness, that beyond your temporary existence, underlying that is the reality of Brahman, which is non-dual existence, right? In the Buddhist tradition, again, it's realizing emptiness, right? Or similar truths of the universe, like the law of karma, like the law of cause and effect. So in both traditions, the insights that we're trying to obtain are direct insights into the nature of reality, okay? I don't want to get into what those are because that becomes philosophical, but in terms of the inner transformation, in both traditions, meditation is there to cultivate a calm and concentrated mind that can look deeply, penetrate, and have direct realization of the true nature of reality and the true nature of oneself, essentially, okay? So this then leads very well into the fourth aspect, or the fourth kind of yoga, which is Jnana Yoga. Okay, now Jnana Yoga means the path of wisdom. So what is the wisdom that is being sought? So the wisdom that is sought on both these paths is, of course, different. The difference is purely philosophical in nature. On the Hindu path to awakening, the wisdom that is sought is seeing the true nature of reality as Brahman. On the Buddhist path to awakening, we're trying to realize the true nature of reality as emptiness. Okay, so this is beyond the topic of this video, the philosophical differences in those two. So let's look at some aspects of wisdom of just life in general on both these paths that are similar, okay, and that will lead to a similar transformation in you on your journey. So karma, reincarnation, and impermanence, right? These are common to both traditions. Both religions, both traditions believe in the law of karma, right? So when this is the case, naturally the way that individuals behave and conduct themselves will be very similar, okay? So there is an emphasis, priority on purifying negative karma and cultivating or creating good karma or merit, essentially. Now, the reason for this is simple, because, you know, like the Buddha said, that there is a path to suffering, and the path to suffering is made up of negative actions, which come from wrong views, from craving, aversion, and ignorance, right? So if we do bad thoughts, words, actions, then that creates the conditions for negative things that happen in the future, right? So that's a path to suffering. But that's good news, because there is also a path to happiness, and the path to happiness is one that is on the opposite of the path to suffering, right? So if ignorance, craving, and aversion lead to suffering, then wisdom and acceptance and love and kindness lead to happiness, essentially. Positive emotions versus afflictive emotions lead to happiness. So the emphasis essentially is on cultivating positive emotions, doing good deeds, and really becoming conscious, becoming aware of your actions, because they determine, you know, not just your future happiness or suffering, but your future existence, essentially, right? Now, in addition to this, when bad things happen in our life, if we're truly practicing, right, if we have a good level of maturity, then we know that whatever is happening to me is my own doing. It sounds mean, but it's not. It's reality, right? Whatever's happening to me is my own doing. So if I want to change my reality, if I want to change my future, then I need to change my thoughts, my words, and my actions. And this is where I need to come from a place of being calm, being kind, being loving. This is what will create my future happiness. And so the inner transformation, right, similarity, is really simple. If you are on the path, you are essentially becoming somebody who is really conscious about your thoughts, your words, and your actions, and your entire life is revolving around consciously cultivating the good. Okay, so this is a huge similarity on both the paths. The second one is impermanence. Both religions speak about impermanence, right? This impermanence, you know, of course, everything in nature is included, and that includes us. It speaks about your precious human body, precious human life as being impermanent, right? And this is profound. It is so important because the human body is needed for awakening to happen. If you are an animal, for example, right? If, let's say, you're a dog, a puppy, a really cute and loving puppy, no matter how cute and loving you are, if someone is teaching you how to meditate, they're teaching you about the Dharma, they're teaching you about karma, you can't learn. It's not possible. So the human birth is so precious. It is so precious. And once it has been found, once you find yourself in a human body and you know that it's impermanent, there is no time to waste. There is literally no time to waste. If you are a practitioner on the path, realizing this truth, regardless in the Hindu tradition or Buddhist tradition, you are going to leave everything else and focus on your own awakening. Okay? So the inner transformation here is somebody becomes extremely conscious about becoming a good person, becoming practicing and working on their path of awakening. Okay? So in terms of wisdom, the law of karma, impermanence, reincarnation, right? All of these are valid on the path. When you live with this wisdom, the inner transformation that occurs in you is that you become somebody who realizes that they have no time to waste. They want to use all of their energies to cultivating a calm mind, to cultivating an open and loving heart, to essentially cultivating this attitude of service, of the desire to benefit others, because this, you know, deep down is what is going to lead to your it is the path to happiness. Doing those things creates happiness immediately, but it also creates future happiness. So when you know this, you immediately try to work very diligently on removing your negative emotions, afflictions, etc. Okay, you become somebody that is a dedicated practitioner on the path if you understand these things well, and if it's a time for you to do that. Okay, that makes a big difference, of course. So that's it. All right, the main purpose of this video was to show you that regardless of the philosophical differences within the Hindu and Buddhist traditions, even within them, there, I'm making a big generalization here. Within the Hindu tradition and within the Buddhist tradition, there are so many different parts, lineages. Okay, all have their nuances, but the point I'm trying to make over here is, for the most part, ultimately the inner transformation that needs to happen in us, it is pretty much similar, right? We need to cultivate a calm and concentrated mind. We need to cultivate an open and loving heart. We need to cultivate this selfless attitude that wants to benefit others, and we need to cultivate through direct experience the wisdom which will help us to live in a state of equanimity. Okay, these are all really, really important. So I'm pretty sure that if we broaden this scope and look at other religions as well, the spiritual transformation that is happening there is also the same, right? When you look at, again, I'm not speaking about this because I don't know as much about other religions, but I know for a fact that when you observe somebody like Jesus, right, he is, you can take out Ram from the Hindu religion and put Jesus there. You can take out Buddha and you can put Jesus there. Ultimately, these beings are all Buddhas, right? Buddha means an awakened being who has realized the truth, who has realized that his true nature, his pure essence is love, and lives in that state and sees all beings as, at the very least equal to them, and at the very most they have an unconditional love toward all beings. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is that regardless of the path that we choose, ultimately it's not so much about like this philosophy or that philosophy, or I'm doing this practice or that practice. No, it's about the essence. The essence is the main transformation happening. Are we becoming calmer and kinder and more wise? And if we are, then we are growing. And if we're not, it doesn't matter how fancy your philosophy or your path seems from the outside. If we are not transforming from within, then it is completely pointless. Okay, so that is the the point of this video. I really hope that you found it helpful. Thank you very much for listening. Namaste.